In today's intellectually challenging, emotionally uplifting, and spiritually fulfilling episode of the show, I'd like to continue a conversation of sorts with you. And by you, I mean a particular kind of especially engaged viewer in the comments. I'm John Cadogan from AutoExpert.com.au, Newcastle cheap, Australia only, website, card. Lights, camera, audio, trousers off. Okay. Time to go over there and start with the big issue. I was proud of my big 9-inch Darth until I saw your massive Darth. I'll have to say it's not all about size from now on. This is quite troubling to me because it sounds like he's having an acute attack of Darth envy. This is undignified, obviously, but also potentially quite dangerous because unchecked, this can develop into a case of full-blown small Darth syndrome. And I know they've got some good people working on a cure, but at this stage, I wouldn't be breath-holding. I think the main thing for all men to remember is you've just got to be at peace with the size of your Darth. You've got to love your Darth. It's not like they do transplants, dude. If someone decides, perhaps, that they don't want you just because your Darth doesn't measure up, then I would argue that this is especially shallow conduct and ultimately they're probably doing you a favour. I'm not saying Darth size doesn't matter because clearly it does. Just for Christ's sake, dude, don't be one of those small Darth prats strutting around the frickin' office, overcompensating, telling everyone that Darth size doesn't matter. This is a surefire way for your colleagues to start calling you Micro Darth. Behind your back, nobody deserves that. I know I'm very lucky, right? I've shown my Darth to millions of people by now, millions. Reactions vary. Chicks are typically amazed or shocked, occasionally terrified. They tell me that they've never actually seen one quite like that. Like, I've heard it all before, dude. Their boyfriends have all had, 12 to 14-inch Darths or something. And they simply presumed that that was just how things were. Generally, they can't keep their frickin' hands off it. And this gets entirely monotonous. Well, not entirely, but it can take up rather a lot of otherwise productive time. You just have to be quite selective, right? You have to manage your time and balance all of the other imperatives in life. It's just like the plates spinning. Last time I measured it, because I know that you want to know, my Darth was 790 millimetres from the base to the top of its head. That's what? 790 divided by 25.4. Take away the 1. 31 and a bit inches. 31.1, I think. That's quite a big Darth. There's probably someone out there with a bigger Darth. I've never inquired. Good luck to them, if there is. But there is a dark side to having such a massive Darth, I'd suggest. Like tripping hazard, dude. Anyway, it takes real guts to acknowledge a man with a bigger Darth publicly. Hashtag respect. And thanks for noticing. As if there was a choice. I actually don't think 9 kilowatt heat isn't a problem at all. For 5 minutes, can't boil a jug of water in 5 minutes with 9 kilowatts power. But things will be hot and on if there isn't some fan radiator water pump pipes and complete magic inside battery. That's from Dragon. I hope I didn't mangle that too badly. Dragon. And I do wish my parents had had the foresight to call me Dragon. I'm Dragon Cadogan from Q cardealer.com.au. That works. Now, Dragon, men should not emoji in this way. And furthermore, I would suggest that the average electric kettle is drawing like 2 and a bit kilowatts out of the wall at most, and it doesn't take 5 minutes to boil it, does it? So 9 kilowatts might be more than enough, dude. I wouldn't want to have 9 kilowatts of waste heat going into my EV battery. And of course, this would be a consequence of that miraculous new Polestar/Store Dot alleged technology that they hope to roll out 100 miles of range in 5 minutes. If 2% of the energy is lost as waste heat in the charging process, because fast charging is a little bit inefficient, then we're talking about 9 kilowatts of waste heat being pumped into a battery, which is 2 and a bit 15 amp welders all running beads flat out inside a frickin' battery. Oh dear, John. He said the car needs 50 kilowatt hours of energy, and you're telling me it's going to be connected to 150 kilowatt charger for an hour? That would be 150 kilowatt hours, sunshine. So, based on your own numbers, the vehicle will be in and out of there in 1/3 of an hour or 20 minutes. Oh dear, Black Datto. Spot the dude who doesn't really know how electricity works. Let me educate you. Okay, so the proposition here was with that Outback EV charger, if you had to pump 50 kilowatt hours of electrical energy into a battery and you had a 150 kilowatt charger, okay? According to Black Datto's logic, let's call it that, then if you've got a 150 kilowatt supply, you can do 50 kilowatt hours in 1/3 of an hour, which mathematically all adds up, but of course, this is not how it works. So let me educate you on electricity, dude. See this? This is an Australian PowerPoint. It's actually 2 Australian PowerPoints, but the whole thing is rated at 10 amps, and we've got 230 volt supply, so this is about 2.3 kilowatts of potential supply if it were connected to the wires in the wall, okay? That's kind of how that works. And see this is a 90 watt hour power tool battery. You've seen one of these, you've got one of these kind of thing. And let's call it 100 just to make the mathematics easier. Let's call this 2 kilowatts coming out of the wall. If you need 100 watt hours and you've got 2,000 of them potentially coming out of the wall, then you could charge this in 1/20th of an hour, which is like 3 minutes. So why doesn't that happen? Black Datto, have you ever stopped to consider that? I'd suggest it's because what you do is you plug one end of your charger into your power point, which is connected to the wires in the wall, and there's a little transformer jigger in here and a rectifier, whatever, and you get your charging current coming out of here. The only problem with your quaint hypothesis, and the thing that stops this battery exploding in my face, is that the charger is only 27 watts. Like, the appliance that you connect to the wall decides how much current it wants to pull out of the wall. And of course, this is why when you've got a big current thirsty appliance like a welder, it's got a 15 amp plug with the deep earth pin, and you can't put it in one of these because it'll try and suck, when you crank it right up, it'll try and suck 15 amps out of a 10 amp supply and potentially burn the joint down, right? So the appliance decides how much electricity it wants to pull out of the mains. And this is exactly how an EV works. You've got a battery in an EV, and you've got a charger inside the EV that decides how much current it will accept in both AC and DC. And then you've got the supply, which is the power point in the case of domestic electricity, and it's a big fat charger if you're at a public charger with your EV. So it's the EV that decides how quickly it's going to recharge. And I've just got some numbers here for you from evdatabase.org. The fast charge, the DC fast charge for a Kona electric, right? 77 kilowatts maximum, so not 150. For a Nissan Leaf, it's 46 kilowatts. And for a Tesla Model 3 Performance, it's 250. So irrespective of the supply from your EV charger, the charging time is going to depend on the charger, which is essentially this bit of kit, but bigger and more complex in the case of an EV. It's going to decide how much to suck out of the supply. So it really doesn't work like that. You can't just take your 150 and divide it by the amount of kilowatt hours and then do the maths on that and say it's going to be 20 minutes, because many EVs will not charge at a maximum of 150 kilowatts. Many of the popular EVs are, in fact, much lower than that.
You said that diesel is somehow more virtuous if used to drive a generator to charge EVs than burnt in a vehicle. But of course, it is not a simple black and white problem like that. E.g., a hybrid attaches a generator, battery and motor to a gas engine and very much decreases fuel usage. Where do you get CX5 official fuel economy at 5.2 litres per 100 Ks? But regardless of this best case highway speeds, a CX5 is on par with an EV charged by a diesel generator.
Diecast TB there, very interesting view also. I'm going to bundle this up with the next one, but as to
where did I get the official fuel economy at 5.2 litres per 100 Ks?
That's from the official fuel economy numbers for highway cycle for the CX5 diesel. Dude, that's what the lab test numbers are. And I know that when you go out on the highway in most cars, especially in places like Earldunda and other outback shitholes of this nature, that you're just going to be loping along at 100 on the flat generally, and you can do much better than the official highway numbers in those conditions, so it seemed reasonable to do that. Not that I think powering EVs with diesel generators is a good idea, but concerning your calculation, highway driving is one thing, but an EV is using more energy per kilometre the faster it goes, right? So, highway driving is the worst case scenario for an EV, but for a petrol diesel car, the opposite is true. City driving is the most wasteful, so on average, a diesel-powered EV can indeed be more efficient overall, right? Depending on where it is used, of course, because on the highway only, it is an even game. Honestly interested to hear where my logic is lacking. Okay, Andy Dabtow 335, who thinks of these names, here's where your logic is lacking, because this is not an abstract concept. We were talking about an Outback charger installed as a prototype by the NRMA in a place called Earldunda, which is in a proper remote Outback shithole. Now, if memory serves, Earldunda, you've got Alice Springs here, and then you've got Earldunda here, and it's about 200 Ks in between them. And Alice Springs is hardly a thriving metropolis, and it's basically the entire north to south length of South Australia before you get to the next city in the south, which would be Adelaide, okay? So in the context of charging an EV at Earldunda or refueling a diesel CX5 at Earldunda, the driving that comes next for the whole range of the EV and for much of the range of the CX5 is highway driving. That's what you do out there. So my comments are in relation to what you are going to do when you fill up with electrons or hydrocarbons at Earldunda. And I would suggest that the economy proposition there is exactly as I said, their line ball, because as you correctly pointed out, it's the worst case operating condition for an EV. We're just loping along at 100, aerodynamic drag is through the roof, you're not doing very much regen, it's like not ideal for an EV. Every time, if you've never driven an EV, you get out on the highway, you're looking at the trip computer, you've been driving through the city and it says 300 Ks to go, you get out on the highway, you're doing 100 or 110 on the freeway, and previously 300 Ks to go, whoa, 250, 200, 220, like that, right? The range diminishes profoundly as soon as you get out on the highway, whereas the reverse is true with internal combustion because you're operating the engine in a very volumetrically efficient way out on the highway. That's just how it is, dude.
Install exercise bikes at the charging station wired to the batteries to keep motorists fit while they wait.
Matt Brown Bill, ladies and gentlemen, nice idea. Pedal your way to increased range. I like it. How long do you think it would take to add 50 kilowatt hours of electrical energy to the battery of an EV using little more than a dynamo and pedal power? Well, I'd suggest that even if such a thing were 100% efficient, the average human would be good, probably not even for 100 watts, but let's say 100 watts on an exercise bike. So in 1 hour, that's 100 watt hours, or 0.1 of a kilowatt hour. So in 10 hours, you'd have 1 kilowatt hour of electrical energy pumped into your EV, just cycling away in the one spot at Earl Dunder with the flies and the summer sun straight overhead. How delightful. And so that means 500 hours later, you'd have 50 kilowatt hours of energy in your battery. And this, of course, is the miracle of hydrocarbons. It's why hydrocarbons were the best thing that ever happened to the human species. You can hate them all you want, dude, but they're the best thing that ever happened to you, and they're the best thing that ever happened to your ancestors. They just are. Because they liberated everyone from 500 hours of pedaling. Like, they liberated humanity from the obligation to do endless backbreaking work just to feed itself. Okay? And that allowed the best brains in the business to innovate. And now we've got the internet, so useful, and CAT scanners, and litigation, and roads, and vehicles, and aircraft, and munitions, and all other kinds of really cool stuff. The Apache helicopter, so impressive, right? We couldn't have any of that without hydrocarbons liberating the species from backbreaking effort. And if you want to experience the backbreaking effort, see how long it takes you to jam 50 kilowatt hours of electrical energy in your friggin' EV with an exercise bike and a friggin' dynamo. Good luck with that. Let me know how you go. What is there? 168 hours in a week. Let's call it 166 or something. So 3 weeks without sleep, pedaling away at 100 watts, and you're good to go again for another couple of 100 Ks in your EV. Hydrocarbons rock, dude. They just do. Now,
if only there was some kind of liquid fuel source that could carried in a tank under the vehicle and topped up quickly when required, it could catch on instead of catching on fire.
Martin Kopp 8759. That's just a fantasy, dude.
Nearly a victim. EVs are 20 times less likely to catch fire than a fossil car. Try researching the subject yourself rather than being jerked around by sensationalist headlines, most of which are exaggerations or patently untrue.
David Parker 7920 there. Interesting viewpoint, dude. I would respectfully retort, lithium-ion batteries burn hotter, longer, and are more toxic than ordinary fires. In structures like, I don't know, airport, car parks, the cause of the fire is less important than the severity, because look at the consequences, look at the risk to the firefighters, look at the cost of the structural collapse and the loss of all of those vehicles. I'd further suggest that most car fires in the developed world are caused by arson or crashes, and these are greatly removed from the motive power of choice of the motorist. Arson and crashes, dude. Like, more EVs, we're going to get more arson because people are going to fail to be able to make the payments and want to do an insurance job, or those EVs are going to get stolen. The little bastards who steal them are just going to burn them out at the end because, it's tradition. And people are going to keep crashing, are they not? Now, The fire might not start immediately after the crash. It could be 2 weeks later. Who knows? That's the Russian roulette joy of EV ownership, is it not? So these things are just more severe, more toxic, hotter, etc. Like a hydrocarbon car fire is likely to be about, 500 degrees C, something like that. Lithium-ion battery fire, 2,000. Structural steel in reinforced concrete structures fails as a consequence of the steel heating up, and therefore the steel can no longer carry the tension in the beams. They collapse because the concrete can't handle it, and then it's just a mess, a dangerous one at that. So these things are around us, and even if the frequency is much lower, they're going to be involved in other fires, right? It doesn't matter what causes the fire. It matters if there's a bunch of EVs in it, because if there are, it's a whole hazmat toxic nightmare, and also much more severe to the extent that there is no firefighting technique for many EV fires. Having a clean inbox is next to godliness. Lol, John, you have an amazing way with words. Point delivered with absolute clarity. Richard Refund there, and thank you, Richard, for your kind words. I'd suggest that in a land where email is king, inbox management is an art, and having a clean inbox is next to godliness. It's also a huge personal responsibility, because how confronting for other people to have to take issue with another for the management of their inbox. Like, this is a discipline thing as I see it. Everyone wants to look at a nice, tidy inbox when they wake up in the morning. You and I are no different. And the responsibility, I think, is pretty clearly on the individual. John, not a massive fan, but you nailed it with this well-executed video. Well done. 2023 there. Not a massive fan of your comment. And the emoji thing, dude, like real men shouldn't emoji. We've got perfectly expressive words in the language, like just learn how to use them. And if you're not a massive fan, why are you even watching?
You make me laugh more than any other person.
Suddenly I'm feeling so responsible. Supercharged there. To whom I would advise, get out more, dude, and just mix with a more side-splitting class of human. They should set up special wrecking yards just for EVs, maybe at Maralinga, South Oz. Grantley Hughes there, totally agreed. GH, Maralinga would work just fine, as would its neighbours, Totem and Emu, where there were also a couple of nuclear tower shots, as I understand it. Wouldn't it be interesting to go out there, the ground covered in trinitite, and I doubt that we could make the environment any worse by putting a whole bunch of EVs out there. Although I did speak to a guy, I think his name was Peter Byrne once, ironically enough. He was the head of Australia's Nuclear Safety Agency, and he told me that a great deal of effort had been taken to clean those places up by scraping up all the trinitite, like you detonate a massive nuclear blast on a tower, turns the desert sand into this green glassy stuff called trinitite after the Trinity blast in Los Alamos in America. And basically they got a bunch of bulldozers and just raked it all up and buried it, so it's pretty safe out there now. But it's not as if that terrain is a stranger to toxic waste, so I guess we could pay the traditional owners rent for doing that kind of, let's call it, disposal. Morbidly obese. 2 words that should be used more often to describe 4x4 owners. Mr. Garrison, 3516 there, another male emoji user. I agree with you. I mean, I did describe the Kia EV9 as morbidly obese because it does weigh 2.6 tonnes and it does have a nearly 600 kilo battery, and this is the opposite of efficiency or prudent use of the Earth's resources as I see it, but I find myself agreeing with Mr. Garrison because it does take a special kind of person, doesn't it, to buy an aluminium box for $100,000 and their principal objective is to take their effluent on tour in the outback forever. Like, Yeah, getting that. Like, where do I sign so I can never go there? It also takes rather a special kind of person to be magnetically attracted to the concept of entertaining one's guests at the head of the dining table in one's aluminium box while reaching over into the kitchen and doing a final toss on a cheeky massaman curry, while at the same time sitting on the thunderbox, dropping a deuce, and having a shower while drinking a beer, all without moving 1 inch. Caravanning is very efficient, but you don't have to move much, like physically move much, and I think that might account for the correlation between body mass index and caravanners generally. In fact, I think that would explain a lot. Earth and air variants. Now they just need a fire one, and you've got the makings of a great band. Yeah, I know it's wind and not air, but it's close enough. Mel Hansen there. Well done, Mel. I see it as more of a fundamental sort of Marvel Comics elemental thing. So you and I can agree, I think, that we should call on Kia to rejig the EV9 model range. Air and Earth can stay, clearly, but GT line has to go. And we need to replace it with fire and water. So we need to have 4 variants in the range: air, earth, fire and water. We need fire, obviously, because EV. And then we need water to put it out, like, I don't know, 30 or 40,000 litres of water should suffice. From time to time, we might even be able to put a special limited edition variant in the EV9 range. The Bowen. The EV9 Bowen. Range topper. Right? And I'd suggest that the way to approach this would be give it everything the GT line has currently, but paint it all Vanta black on the outside. Like, even the windscreen, it's just got to be totally blank, like a black hole. It's got to look like that. And inside, we need to just turn everything off, except the navigation system, which has to be broken. Because it just seems appropriate somehow to match the name with the specification and the operational characteristics of the vehicle. I just want it to look blank and kind of never know where it's really going.